Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Parenting Through Change or Parenting After the Pandemic, whichever way you want to look at it. But definitely about the challenges faced by parents and the opportunities for parents in the aftermath of long periods of lockdowns, and now that the world is changing again and seems to be opening up again. Thinking about our children, thinking about our parenting, and thinking about how we would like to be as parents for our children and what our children need from us. So I'll stop stalling. Thank you all for joining us. It's really great to have you here. Acknowledgement of country quickly, Yam, Gambangir, Jagun. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands upon which I live. That's the Gumbaynggirr people. Pay my respects and express my gratitude to their elders past, present and emerging for their continuing custodianship of this country over countless generations, and extend a warm welcome to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. Welcome. So I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a counsellor, I'm a coach with Uprise and a range of other organisations. I speak to a lot of people, a lot of parents, about their experiences both through the lockdowns and now subsequent to the lockdowns. The subsequent to the lockdowns is very fresh. It's very much an emerging space. And the previous webinars I've done on parenting have really focused on the experience of parenting and the challenges for children throughout the lockdown itself. And so we're going to be trying to move forward to look ahead. You can write in the chat. I'm just going to type in the chat to say hi. It's a good idea just to say, hi Nigel, hi everyone, into the chat. That just gets the chat started. These webinars, and we know all learning is far more effective if people are willing to actually communicate and be a part of the conversation. The evidence is like super clear in all forms of education that passive, sort of learning and absorbing is very, very minimal. If you engage in the learning, then you absorb so much more. So I really encourage you to do that. And it also makes my job more fun. So I always love to have the conversation with people, and it inspires me. And if there's things that you're interested in, then you'll send me off. If you make a comment about something, that'll send me off into a bit of an explanation and description and exploration of that particular area as well. So this webinar is what we're kind of assuming is that, and it's a little bit sort of a flow on from what was happening during lockdowns, working parents with children at home. Previously, we would have been looking at people with children who are also getting their education from home as well. But now we're sort of looking at coming out of lockdowns, what that means, different people in different states having different experiences, but it's also for the managers and colleagues of parents to gain an understanding of what your colleagues who have children might be experiencing at the moment and how you might be able to support them. So just a quick Take the Pulse. I've got a couple of Take the Pulse webinars. You might hear a kookaburra. I can see a kookaburra out the window winding up, so you might hear him take off in a minute. How old are your kids? And that just lets me know who I'm talking to. Yeah, 18, 15, 15, 13, 8, 8, 4, 3, 5.5, 7.5, 7, 7, 7, 11, 13, 14, 11, 5 months, 3.5, 3.5, 13 months, 9, 13, 12. Doesn't look like there's anyone with no kids, so it looks like we're talking to parents here. And so it's just important to be aware that when we talk about children, we're talking about, the difference between a 5-month-old and a 15 or 17-year-old. It's just an entire universe apart in terms of what the experience is. So I'm going to try and talk to all, talk across all ages and stages, but just keep in mind that there'll be parts of this that'll be more relevant for you, and then kids with additional needs and disabilities, and that's also significant. I had a particular section in this webinar about that, but because of time, I was like, I'm going to take it out. And I'm starting slow now, which is how I do my webinars, but by the end, I'm just going to be racing. All right. What would you describe as your biggest parenting challenge just now? What have you noticed about other people with kids? What are the challenges that people seem to be facing? What's your expectation about issues that are going to come up? Technology, the battle with the screen. Yeah, defiance, anxiety. Yeah, computers, that's going to be a common one. Okay, I can see where I'm going to be focusing. And one of the things that I recommended during lockdowns was just just chill out on the whole screen situation. The it was a way to be able to work from home, for kids to be self-sufficient and entertained. But kids, the kids have very different kids have very different capabilities when it comes to being able to engage with technology. Um, Work role, adolescent deviance and defiance. I think you mean, hope you mean defiance. But deviance is interesting as well. Managing emotions, anxieties, tantrums, juggling different responsibilities. That's really tough. Technology and defiance, separation. That's really hard, and it does have a big impact on kids. A lot of relationships really got badly affected by lockdowns, and lockdowns tended to exacerbate other underlying issues by forcing people to be contained in a house together. Balancing work while also caring, school disengagement, parental alienation. Yeah, that's a really difficult challenge, and I'm assuming that's in the context of separation. It's not if it's you're feeling alienated by your children in a relationship. Managing emotions, screen time, short fuses, and the social anxiety following COVID. Returning to routine post lockdown. Okay, I'll keep moving. All right, so going to go over some basic stuff, and I'm going to start moving quickly because some of this stuff is just setting the scene, and you know it already. So what's the pandemic done? It's increased fear, it's increased anxiety, it's increased the presentation of mental health. What's mental health? It's fear plus anxiety and not knowing what to do with it. So when you're afraid and when you're anxious, or even when you're excited, especially for kids, you want to do something with that energy. When you're stuck at home and you can't do anything, it turns into a disorder. It sort of grows into, oh, I've got the energy to go and live my life and do stuff in the world, and I can't, so I have to suppress it. And it's that suppression of emotional energy that creates what we tend to call the psychological disorders. So it impacts. So there's been a decreased sense of trust in community, a decreased sense of trust in government, decreased social cohesion. There was sort of this kindness pandemic, but people were separated. We didn't interact with one another. We lost a sense of closeness to our family members, to our friends, to our neighbours. And we couldn't utilize social supports. So the networks, that it takes a village to raise a child. The vet networks that we used to rely upon, they kind of all but dried up. Different schools were sort of able to step up to different extents. Where some schools were very involved, other schools had, most of the schools where my kids went didn't hear from the school at all. Just kind of got these packages, and we muddled through schooling and really had no support at all. So different experience. Other people I've spoken to felt like their schools were very supportive. All right, impacts of lockdowns. So we know that 36% of the workforce are parents. We had parents working from home. We had kids schooling from home. That limited movement, that limited social interaction, limited activities. There was limited things for kids to do. Kids just want to do stuff really hard. And I think that there's a kind of this forgetting of what what's normal. What do grown-ups normally do? What do kids normally do? I'm hearing now people coming out of lockdowns, people going, well, I'm not sure what I want to do. I've gotten really used to being at home now. I'm not really sure that I want to go out. So some people are sort of really spilling out and partying and having a great time. Other people are going, you know what? I'm just going to take it easy. I'm just going to take it slow. Just take it one step at a time. All right. What about you? What have you noticed? You might have said some of this already in terms of your challenges, but what have you noticed about your kids since coming out of lockdowns? I heard people reflecting on, and for the person who's working with kids, you can share on what you're seeing in your context. Disengagement with school, that seemed to be a theme. That kind of ongoing addiction to screens, even though we can get out and about and go and do things and play with friends, are kids prioritizing screens over real life. Social anxiety, kids actually fearful of going out and meeting their friends in the real world. There's some relief. There's a reduction in anxiety. There's happier kids. My kids are certainly, I think my kids are happier. Yeah, there's less independence, which suggests a greater level of dependence. Some kids seeing less restlessness as they go back to school, go back to pre-existing activities, a reluctance to socialize, difficulty in younger children settling when they return to daycare, social anxiety for sure, very clingy. All right, keep them coming. Happy playing with each other, wanting to stay at home, yet safe. Yeah, for some, particularly some, I reckon, I'm not sure what you wrote earlier, but that 3 to 5 year old, I reckon, could be happier just staying at home and playing with one another. That's become their secure place. Wanting to be social, but how do you be social? How do you do this? Worried no one will play with them. More difficult drop-offs. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, trying to that separation anxiety that emerged in lockdowns have made us all more anxious about exercising post-lockdown freedoms, meltdowns at home. It's tough. All right, every child and every family is different. I'm going to whiz through this now. These are some of the things that we can expect. The key variables really is what we call ages and stage, and the age and stage of development. And this is what people have experienced during lockdowns, and what you might be starting to experience as the lockdowns emerge. If you've got kids this age, or you know people, or you work with kids of this age, what have you noticed? So parents of infants, 0 to 1.5-year-olds really liked being at home with mum and dad, and mum and dad tended to be really like being at home with the baby. Though there was often sort of tensions in terms of how to balance working life with the demands of a child. And what was important is that when a child's this young, that we've got no expectation that the child self-regulates. We know that the child needs us, and so we don't. What happens is we tend to get overinflated expectations of it. Having a few conversations with parents about this recently, that just this kind of moment where I had this moment too. I've got a 12-year-old to someone. Oh, he used to love going to the skate park and he doesn't want to go anymore. And I don't know. And then the person said, "Oh, how old is he?" And I said, "Oh, he's 12." And in that moment, just that second, I went, he's only 12. Oh my gosh, who wants to go to the skate park on their own with a bunch of teenagers who are doing God knows what when they're 12 years old? And I've kind of expected, I just sort of in my mind, because he's tough and he's strong and he likes to get out and about, really gregarious, but I'd sort of expected too much from it. And we often do that when even our toddlers, our 1.5 to 5-year-olds, they show us moments of maturity, and we start to expect them to be able to show us consistent moments of maturity. And we just forget that they're just little tiny babies. And no matter what age we get up to, they're still kids, and they're still human, and they're still learning and growing. And even adults don't get it right all the time. So your parents of 1 to 5 to 5-year-olds during lockdowns, they tended to have the highest levels of parental distress. Children constantly on the move, very difficult to contain. Pre-lockdown, there was a strong reliance on childcare. So these parents are now trying to get their kids back into childcare. And as our childcare worker in the group has said, seeing that these kids are really struggling to settle back into childcare and daycare. These kids need constant parental supervision. They need constant engagement. They need constant entertainment, and they're always looking for love. They're always looking for cuddles. Very, very difficult to work when you've got a toddler in the house, and that's really important to be aware of. Your 6 to 13-year-olds, these are your primary schoolers. It was also really difficult for parents parenting primary schoolers during the pandemic. Schools, there tended to be a big gap between primary schools and high schools. A lot of primary schools really couldn't get it together in terms of how to do distance education. They there's this kind of overinflated expectation where they'd send you out a bunch of materials and just expect the kid and the family to work through it with very little instruction. And then the feeling of parents of, they're at school 6 hours a day normally, 6.5 hours a day. Maybe I should be giving them 6.5 hours of education a day. And what if they don't? If they just waste the first half of the day? Do we need to keep going into the night? What's the rules here? What are the boundaries? What are the limitations? And if we're going to engage them in educational activities, then they need consistent support. They need our regular reassurance. They need us to be really smart about how we change the activity, how we mix learning with free play, how we orchestrate break times. very, very different to the way that we would work ourselves as adults. Our kids 6 to 13, they're not going to respect our parental boundaries. They're not able to self-regulate in terms of study, play, diet, and exercise. So they need us to do a lot of their thinking for them. So it's been extremely exhausting for parents. And as these kids are coming out of lockdown, yes, they're going back to school, but there's a sense that there's an expectation. There's probably a need for you and us as parents to do a little bit more hand holding than we would have done before. It's easy to go, oh, okay, we're back at school now, if we go back into the routine. But actually being aware that actually there's probably a lot of hand holding that needs to be done. For your 13 plus, your teenagers, overall during lockdowns, the parents had lower levels of parental distress. These kids tended to be more autonomous, but that's not always the rule. They tend to be able to engage in self-directed study. They can self-regulate. They can get themselves food. They can manage their own emotions. They often have more freedom in terms of communicating with friendship groups, so they can actually sort of engage with their friends. And certainly the teenagers that I've been in contact with, they've actually been able to sort of maintain friendship circles and find ways of engaging online. And actually that's something that worked really well in our household, allowing teenagers to have some freedom in engaging online with boundaries that focused on safety rather than any other form of control. More likely to respect parental work boundaries, to be able to go, okay, you're working, I'll leave you to it. But people have brought this up, also very rebellious. And I know that there is a cohort of teenagers, boys and girls, who got really frustrated with lockdowns, who really felt impeded upon, imposed upon, restricted, and all kids have this antenna, this very, very active antenna that's called the unfairometer. And that when that unfairometer goes off in a teenager, that's where you get this really kind of pronounced, rebellious, angry pushback against parents and against others as well. Also, the influence of social media for teenagers. I wonder whether, now that we're at the end of COVID and we're coming back, I wonder whether the parents of teenagers, some teenagers are really sort of doing it the hardest, particularly, very influenced by social media. Things went very online there for a while, but now we're back to this mix of face-to-face and online, and it's a really fraught and precarious environment for teenagers to be growing up in. In terms of this idea of special or additional needs, kids have unique propensities, but kids have unique abilities, and it's really important to tune into your child. And hopefully that's what you're doing. As I've been talking, I could have sort of framed that a bit better a bit earlier on, but that's what I hope that you're doing. You're thinking about your child, and is your child happy playing out inside? Does your child really sort of burst with energy and need to get outside? To what extent is your child able to regulate their own screen time? And to what extent do you need to be like this rigid, dictatorial taskmaster? That's right. You get 30 minutes from 3:45 to 4:15, and then you have to take 2 hours off and do homework, and then you can have another 30 minutes. We need to tune into our own children and what they're capable of, and then be able to support them and give them what they need, and also give them what we need them to do as well. All right, anything that's coming up for you, any kind of thoughts or ideas as I'm talking, please just drop it into the chat. Okay, so these are the tips that I'm going to suggest. And again, I just get you to bounce off these, see what applies to you, see what works for you. Turn off the news. That's my number one tip. If it's stressing you out, if it's stressing your kids out, if it's not really helping, turn it off. My mind, and I hope that you don't take this too personally. I mean, I do hear that some families will have the news or the TV on in the background all the time, and they call it programming for a reason. And our kids in particular are very, very susceptible to programming. And yes, they seek out their own programming when they go onto social media and when they watch YouTube and other kind of accessed streaming. But when the TV is on all the time, then there is this constant background think this, feel this, do this, think this, feel this, do this, and it can make things very, very very, very stressful, very, very complicated, and set up a lot of cognitive dissonance in our minds, which is going to lead to and breed anxiety. Top tip number 2, practice self-acceptance as a parent. This is tips for children over 20. Their children, let them go. Make them sink or swim. That's my tips for children over 20. And I know that in this day and age, a lot of us find that really difficult. What? No, they're still a child. I need to parent them. Maybe you do. I'll come back to that in a moment if I think of something else to add. So look, we tend to expect too much from our children. We also tend to expect too much from ourselves. And we need to be honest and willing to accept our limited capacities in terms of being a parent, but also in terms of being an employee, in terms of being a family member, a parent, or a sibling to our own brothers and sisters, a child to our own parent, a partner, a spouse, a husband or a wife, and a friend. And we need to make sure that we can only give what we're actually able to give, and to prioritize self-care. There's been a conversation that's been happening around me recently about selfishness. Selfishness is this thing that's come up around the COVID vaccinations, and if you don't take a vaccination, then you're selfish. And it's triggering, not just for people who aren't vaccinating, but for everyone. It's like, oh, selfish. Geez, I don't want to be selfish. Selfish is like, that's obviously a really bad thing. Don't want to be that. And there's this real kind of mix up between taking care of oneself, which is absolutely vital, and selfishness. And what happens is that for a lot of people, when they try and take care of themselves, they get this voice that says, oh, that's just selfish, as if we live in this world where you're supposed to be selfless all the time. And yet that's really confusing too, because a selfless person, a person without a self, is no person at all. And I'm in a career where I give all day, every day, to other human beings. That's what I do. It's my job. All day, every day. But in order to do that, I know that I have to have a higher priority than that. And that higher priority is taking care of myself first. And I know that if I don't take care of myself first, then the ability, the extent to which I can give to other people is limited. But so long as I keep filling my own cup and making sure that my own cup is always full, then I can endlessly give and give and give to other people. So prioritize your self-care, other acceptance. Be honest with yourself about other people's limited capacities. Your spouse may not be the best parent. They might have limited capacities, and probably that's to do with their own childhood and experience being parented. And they might have really strong, ridiculous ideas about, what parents should and shouldn't do. Take a deep breath, have some empathy, have some acceptance, understand that they are who they are what they are. And, any of your attempts to change them, all past attempts to change them have probably been barely successful, and any future attempts to change them are going to be barely successful. So accepting them as they are is going to be most likely your best bet going forward. This applies to children too. I was a champion swimmer as a kid. I always thought, my kids will have my genes. They can be champion swimmers too. I'll get them swimming early. They'll get in the pool, and they'll be champion swimmers. My kids are not champion swimmers. They hate swimming. They don't want to swim. And it's, my eldest son is now 15 years. He's saying, come on, Dad, I'm 15. Can I not do squad anymore? And it breaks my heart. But that's not who he is. He's a different person. I need to accept that. Other people's limitations in terms of their ability to be an employee. And this one's kind of for managers. Managers, just chill out on your staff, particularly if they've got kids, because this is like a really, really weird, messed up time in the entire human history. We need to give people a break. Family members, maybe your mum or your sister or your brother hasn't stepped up to the mark. They're disappointing you. Forgive them. Show them empathy, because you know what? They're just deep in their own stuff, figuring out their own stuff, and they don't mean it. They just can't cope. All right, connect. So any chance you can, and I know that you're thinking this isn't about parenting. It is about parenting, because we forget to connect with our children. We forget to just spend time with them one-to-one. And sometimes, and this is really common for parents, we feel like if we give our kids a minute, they'll take a whole day. but they don't. And I often tell the story of horse training and looking after horses. And if you act with a horse as if you've got all day, whatever you need to do with that horse, it'll take you 5-10 minutes. If you show the horse through your body language that you've only got 5 or 10 minutes, and so the horse better behave, it's going to take you all day. Same with kids, same with other people. Act as if you've got all day, give them 5 minutes, and they'll be satisfied for hours most of the time. Give them your time. Connect with your partner. My partner, what? We don't have time for that. Make time. Connect. Your friends, reach out. Communicate with people. Pat your pet. Get a pet. Be close to nature. Connect with the land. Connect with the natural environment. Connect with the stars, the sun, the universe, your creator. Pray. It's all connection. And if there's one thing that we as mammals need more than anything else, it's connection. Reprioritizing. So I've kind of covered that, but we sometimes prioritize our work life, our professional life, over what our children need. Our children need to feel loved, accepted, and supported, and that's more important than anything that they might learn at school, and it's more important than anything that you might do in your job on any given day. And so sometimes you just need to go, you know what, work can wait. My child needs love and attention. Give my child that love and attention. If you are doing it tough, don't expect too much of anything at all from yourself and your kids. Whatever they and you manage to do on any given day has to be enough, even if it's the bare minimum. Sometimes this feels like this goes on. It's like, I'm just barely, holding on, and we're just not doing much. That's okay. You will come out of it. There will be another day. Things will change. Family meetings are a big tip. Tips for children over 20, if they're living at home, family meetings. Tips for little kids, family meetings. Hold them regularly. Lockdowns was every day. I don't need to do it every day, but each week. But dinner time's a good family meeting time for most people. Try and sit down to dinner together. Have a conversation with your children. At my house, we use roses and thorns. We're just aware of the time. You say, what's your rose? And rose is the one good thing that happened during the day. What was your thorn? The one bad thing that happened during the day. And it's just about listening and about sharing. You can review the day, review the week, what's going well, what didn't go well. Ask family members, what would you like to see happen to make things better for you and other family members? And what can you do? So it's about saying, what do you want? But also, what can you do for other family members? What can you do to make things better for you and other family members? Kids need one-to-one time. Most of us are familiar with bedtime, and suddenly our kids want to talk and hang out. Try and give them that time. If it happens every night at bedtime, I have this conversation a lot, then put them to bed 15, 20 minutes, even 30 minutes earlier. They'll go, well, it's too early, go to bed. No kids want to go to bed. Go, put them to bed earlier, go in and hang out with them, and they'll start talking to you. Let them unload, let them unpack. Kids are going to be kids, and you're going to lose your temper. So plan for it. What we tend to do is we tend to live in this state of wishful thinking, of this kind of idealized version of a parent that we want to be, and then our kids push all of our buttons, because that's what they're really excellent at doing, and they push all of our buttons, and then we explode, and then we go, oh no, I'm the worst parent in the world. I can't believe I yelled at my children, and I can't believe I even might have lashed out and hurt and done something that I would never do. That's just not me. It's just not who I am, but they made me do it. Let it go. I am that person. That's me. And yes, I do lose my shit, and I better plan for it. So how do you plan for it? Anticipate. Yeah, you're only human. Notice your child's getting restless or distracted. Engage them early. Redirect them to a different activity. This stuff, one of my favorite textbooks in counseling is called Predictable Difficulties. And what it's highlighting is that actually most of the stuff that goes wrong in life was predictable if we'd have just taken a moment to anticipate. So anticipate. Notice what's going on with your kids. Notice, we had, Sunday night. We know that one of our children is going to be like, oh my God, school tomorrow, not school, here we go again. So anticipate it and make sure things are light and fun and is helped to get ready for school. Self-regulate. Take time out to calm your own emotions first. Slow, deep breathing. It's a proven method for soothing your nervous system. When you see the explosion coming, and you can see it, when you can see the misbehavior coming and you can see it, start with yourself. Yeah. Breathe deeply. Get yourself ready to engage. Empathize with your kid. Connect with what's going on with them before the behavior started. My son on a Sunday night, he's going back to school. He doesn't do well at school. It makes him feel like a failure, makes him feel stupid, doesn't feel like he's learning anything. So this anxiety builds on a Sunday night. Okay, I can empathize with that. And I can work with him on that, and I can listen to him, and I can just try and hold his hand through it. Can't necessarily change it. He's still going to be anxious and nervous and not feel great about going to school. But I can be with him through that process, and I can be the support person. Set clear expectations. Tell children what you want from them. Praise them when you see them do it. Sometimes we need to ignore bad behavior, particularly clearly attention-seeking behavior. Classic ones is when little kids want to show their bum or show their genitals. We just ignore it. The best thing to do is to say, oh yeah, everyone's got one of those. Ignore it. When we get sort of, oh no, what are you doing? That's bad. You shouldn't do that. We sometimes sort of feed their need for attention. Set clear, realistic consequences for anticipated and unwanted behavior. Follow through. Don't threaten a consequence that you can't or won't follow through on. How many parents say, if you do that, I'm going to take that away. Oh, if you do that, I'm going to do that. And then it doesn't happen. What does that teach kids? It teaches them, I'll tell you what it teaches them. It teaches them to ignore you and to just write off anything that you say. You've got to follow through, and the earlier the better. And it's really hard work, but if you say it, you've got to follow through. Even if you wish you hadn't said it, you've got to follow through. I'm sorry. After family conflict, when you have lost your proverbial, come back and say sorry. And I wish that hadn't happened. And I want to be a better person. And I'm trying really hard. And I'd like you to try too. How could you try? This is how I'm going to try and be better. How can you try and be better? All right, I've got a couple more. Sorry about everyone's time. Obviously, a little bit long, this webinar. These are some really big tips. And my kind of theoretical here, or my hypothetical is, what would change for you if you just fundamentally believed that you are a good parent? So whether or not you are objectively a good parent, and look, no one has got that measuring stick. It just doesn't exist. You're from, look at the Joneses, look at the people next door, look at my sister, look at that. They're such a good parent. Kids have you. You are the best they have. And there's a fundamental shift that happens when you believe that you're good enough. And you can just pretend. You can do it now. Just pretend to believe that you are the perfect parent for your child. When you do that, you become that parent. It doesn't mean you're perfect, but it means that you're good enough. And it means that you can relax into whatever happens and go, you know what? If they're being super defiant and deviant and causing all of this strife, it's not about me. I'm doing the best I can. Yeah, I'm the best parent that they've got. I'm the best parent that I'm able to be. All right, let's meet this and see where it goes. We know that perfect parents aren't good parents. So we have got a culture where perfection has pervaded a lot of the culture, and that a lot of parents expect them, particularly mums, expect themselves to be perfect parents and do everything perfectly for their kids. A lot of this has come out of a period of history where a lot of us grew up coming home on our own after school and being at home without our parent. And so then telling ourselves at the age of 14 or 15 or 12 or 13, I'm never going to do this. I'm going to be the best parent. I'm going to be a perfect parent. I'm always going to be there for my kids. But then we're not a good parent. Children need to be loved and accepted as imperfect in themselves, and they need parents who also accept themselves as imperfect. And that's what creates the good enough parent, which is exactly what children need. All right, got a couple more things there, but otherwise we're out of time today. Thanks to everyone for bearing with us. Please click on the feedback form and give us some feedback. Sorry we didn't have more time for questions, but thanks very much for being here. And I really hope that you gained something out of the webinar today. Take care and happy parenting.